We have next Dirk Reinermann from the World Bank speaking to us about his ideas about Greece and growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and before we all evaporate, distinguished guests, thank you very much for inviting us. Mr. Tsimokos, the team of the Delphi Economic Forum, thank you very much for having us. It's a privilege and an honor. Like others, I did consult with the Pythia last night. In fact, there was a whole line of us. I'm not going to point out anyone, but I asked, and I was sitting next to Professor Papademos, and I was surprised about his prediction, because it was absolutely right. What she recommended, I should put up there as the leading headline, is exactly know thyself. And we understand that in the interpretation as an appeal to pay no attention to the opinion of the multitude. But we also understand it as the need to be analytical and to be evidence-based in our policy making. So what I have, next slide please, is some recommendations. And when I looked at the session and told the Pythia that we were going to talk about laying the foundation of growth, strategy for sustainable development, she said two things. One, good luck with that. And secondly, she said it's very hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes. And especially so in a crisis when everything seems to be a priority. So it's really, really important. Everything that's been said today is true, but it's also very, very important to know what your next step is and what your priorities are. So I'm going to offer some, and like the three-legged stool of the Pythia, and that's my last analogy, I promise, I have three recommendations, three messages, basically. If I could have the next slide, please. So I'm going to end one more. There we go. That's the three-legged stool. One more back. There we go. So I'm going to talk about the need to improve the investment climate, the need to make better use of Greece's geographic location. And lastly, yes, we do need to talk about the urgency to improve social protection. Next slide. So what this shows you won't be able to see this, certainly not in the back, is the ranking that we do every year in what we call Doing Business, our annual report, where we rank the quality and the investment climate. The good news is Greece has been making tremendous progress over the past years. It went from rank 100 to rank 60, and it was among the top 10 reformers 2 years in a row in our reports. Now, that's a very significant achievement. And this is not legislation, this is actually implementation of reforms that actually matters to entrepreneurs. So 2 thumbs up for that. Bad news is the distance to the frontier, which is the upper line, or you can take Denmark as the best performer in the EU on the left-hand side, is still relatively large. So we still have quite a long way to go. So how do we do that? And what are the actions that we need to take? Next slide, please. Take an example. We talk a lot about cutting red tape, etc. Let's make it concrete. Let's look at requirements to operate an oil mill, right? We have olive oil as a comparative advantage. Let's have a look at it. Press again, please. So those are the requirements on the left. Forget what the text means. It's 2 in France. Look at the right. Next. That's Greece. Okay, I think I make my point. I don't need to read it to you. It's 11 steps, and this is in an area of comparative advantage. Why does it matter? This is micro. Why does it matter at a macro level for the economy? The OECD calculated with another methodology that the administrative burden in the 13 most important sectors of the economy costs Greek businesses 3.3 billion euro annually. Right? That's the kind of numbers we're talking about when we talk about red tape. Okay, next slide, please. Actually, one more. There we go. One more. Okay, so what does that actually mean? The Deputy Minister Tsakli talked about simplification. This is what this means, and we're quite privileged to be in an advisory function to the Greek government in this area with the generous funding from the Commission. I see Commissioner Kretou has joined us. So what can be done? This investment licensing framework will do something very simple, which is to simplify the way Greek businesses, but also foreign direct investments, can get their operational licenses and permits, all of them, horizontally, essentially. It's going to make it a lot easier to obtain those licenses. It will also fight corruption, because at every time you ask for a license or for a permit and you have an interaction with a public official, it presents an opportunity for rent seeking. We know that. And it protects public goods better, because right now you can bribe your way out of protecting the environment, protecting public health, protecting yourself against fire hazards, etc. Right? This will be very much more difficult in a simplified way. So how is it simplified? In two ways. One is that it's going to be risk-based, and the framework law already exists, it's already passed, it just needs to be implemented systematically now, and that's where we are right now. So investments are going to be risk-based. If you're opening a kiosk outside of the building here, you should not have a certificate whether you're putting hazardous waste into the rivers, for instance, right? That's not necessary. You're not going to do that. That's a very low-risk investment activity. You should be able to operate tomorrow. If you're operating or planning to operate a nuclear power plant, then you're in the high-risk section, and then strict surveillance is warranted. You need ex-ante licenses for everything. So let me not go more into detail, but those are basically the principles of that, and it's going to make a big difference going forward. Next slide, please. What's also extremely important, and we're looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, is property rights. And of course, Greece is legendary for the problems around cadastre and land use planning. Up there, you have the text on why property rights are important, but to this audience, I don't need to repeat this. Next slide, please, or push again, exactly. Here you see, as part of the Doing Business report, we also look at registering property as an indicator, as one of the 10 indicators. And here, Greece is ranked 144th. This is the worst indicator of Greece, and you can imagine in 184 economies in which neighborhood Greece finds itself here. What does that mean? What is the impact? I'll give you some numbers. It leads to dead capital and to informal development. There are about 1 million constructions that are considered illegal, that total 72 billion euro in value. The formalization of activities like that come at a very high cost, between 7 and 20% of the property value. That's prohibitive. That's pushing people into informality. Overly complex zoning regulations. There is a whopping 26,000 pages of zoning regulations. A planning study takes 15 years and costs 6,000 euro per hectare. Those of you who are in the private sector know all this, but this is really a very, very significant tax on the private sector. Land and property market inefficiency, we estimate, costs about 5.5 billion euro per year. So the bad news is Greece is one of the worst performers globally when it comes to cadastre and to land use planning. The good news is it's easy to fix with the right political will. And we're working with the Ministry of Environment on this. In fact, I'll be there next week with our team to see how we can make progress in this area. Second area, next slide, please. Click one more time. And this is about taking advantage of geography for trade. And I'm not going to talk about tourism, but I'm going to talk about trade. So what you see here, I hope in the background as well, so on the left-hand side is the now. This is how trade flows essentially go at the moment between factory Asia and factory Europe. They pass by Greece, and then they go into Rotterdam and to Hamburg. Now, as a German with some Dutch genes, that's wonderful. But as a world banker who likes competition, that's not great, because you have the geographic location, Greece has the geographic location, and it's not benefiting from this. Next slide, please. So look at why is this not happening enough? How can we move from the left chart to the right-hand chart? Well, you need transport and logistics services. So again, what you see here in small letters is our key performance indicators for the logistics sector. Forget about the details. You see the bars that are the number of days to perform certain functions, and then you see the circles that give you Finland. So you see a little bit a relative assessment. Next slide, please.
1 minute, please.
Okay. Next. So this gives you a bit more data on the potential. In the last 4 years, essentially, Piraeus port throughput has quadrupled from 1 million to almost 4 million TEUs. That's containers in normal language. And this has happened in the middle of the crisis due to the investment of COSCO. It shows it can be done. But the problem is, guess what the percentage of those containers is that goes into Greek rail? 1.3%. The rest is big ship comes in, small ship goes out. Where? To Rotterdam and to Hamburg. Right? So, and there are a lot of services which I will not talk about in terms of the rail corridors, the logistics services, etc., that need to be improved. And if those are improved, the Greek economy can actually reap the benefits of this huge trade flow that is passing by Greece a lot more. Last but not least, next slide, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, here you see a little bit more detailed the impact of the crisis on anchored poverty, and basically the column that you would be looking at is this one right here. Okay, we're looking at a doubling from 19.7% to 49.5% between 2008 and 2012, anchored poverty. This is dramatic socially, economically, and politically. And of course, for that, you need, at the minimum, you need a social safety net. So let's see how we're doing on that. Next slide. Next slide, please. This shows you the quality of the targeting of social protection spending. And at the far right, you see Greece. Only 60% of the poorest quintile, the bottom 20% of the income scale, are covered through social protection transfers. So Greece is not spending too much on social protection. It's a median spender in the EU, but it's not arriving where it's supposed to arrive. It is not targeted and it is not means tested. What's the problem with that? Well, on the one hand, in the short run, and in any case, I think we all believe that this is a social problem. This is a human problem. This is the human side of the crisis. But as an economist, I have to tell you, this is not just a social policy issue. This is a hardcore economic growth issue, because this will affect growth going down the road in terms of education, in terms of social cohesion. So this is a growth issue, and we need to address this with urgency. And then this is the last slide. One more, please. And this is about the way this is being handled right now, which is the Social Solidarity Income Program, SSI, which is the Guaranteed Minimum Income Program for those of you who know about these things. It is going to be targeted, it's going to be means tested, and the beginning of a really serious overhaul of the social protection system. So in summary, I get the last slide. We need to improve the investment climate through investment licensing reform, cadastre, land use planning. We need to make better use of Greece's geographic location through logistics, transport, and rail. And there's a real urgency to improve social protection for the short run and for the long run. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.